It's hard to imagine the true darkness that unfolded during World War II. The textbooks tell us dates, battles, and political shifts, but underneath the familiar narratives lies a world of secret psychological warfare, mad science, paranoia, starvation, children in combat, burning cities, and operations so bizarre they feel like the twisted plots of a dystopian novel. To understand the real depth of this war, you have to peel back the surface and step into the shadows, the places where fear, desperation, and cold calculation shaped decisions that affected millions. One of the most unbelievable chapters comes from the United States Ghost Army, an entire division built not to fight but to deceive. Imagine this: while real troops fought on the front lines, hidden behind them was a strange group of artists, actors, sound engineers, and set designers, all wearing military uniforms and carrying zero actual weapons. Their mission was pure psychological manipulation. They created entire fake battalions with inflatable tanks, rubber aircraft, and trucks made from canvas stretched over wooden frames. At night, they moved these decoys around like stage props, repositioning phantom divisions to make the Germans believe they were surrounded by vast armies. Massive speakers blasted recorded tank noises and marching sounds through forests. Fake radio chatter imitated real units. It was a battlefield illusion, an elaborate performance so convincing that German intelligence completely fell for it. Thousands of lives were saved by people who fought not with bullets, but with imagination. And for nearly 50 years, the world had no clue this phantom army existed. But while this group used deception to save lives, other wartime operations used deception to destroy them. Deep in Manchuria, the Imperial Japanese Army ran one of the most diabolical human experimentation programs in history. Unit 731. There are horrors in war. And then there is Unit 731, a place where human beings were not seen as people, but as disposable laboratory tools. Men, women, and children were injected with plague, anthrax, and cholera. They were dissected alive with no anesthesia so researchers could observe organs in real time. Prisoners were tied to posts, and grenades were detonated nearby to study blast effects. Frostbite experiments forced victims' limbs to freeze solid before being smashed with sticks to measure breakpoints. These acts weren't random, they were planned, documented, and organized by scientists who later walked free after trading their research to the United States in exchange for immunity. Justice bent to politics, and thousands of victims vanished into silence. War produced not just cruelty, but surreal inventions too, like Britain's plan to build an aircraft carrier made of ice. Yes, ice. Engineers experimented with a material called pykrete, a combination of water and sawdust that was harder than steel, bullet-resistant, and strangely durable even under heat. The idea was to create a floating mountain thousands of feet long, unsinkable, capable of anchoring bombers in the Atlantic. Tests actually worked. Churchill himself approved the concept, but eventually the project collapsed, not because it was impossible but because it was too massive to build. Still, for a moment in history, the Allies were seriously planning a frozen aircraft carrier drifting through the ocean like a glacial fortress. Other operations were far more sinister. One of the darkest truths behind early German battlefield success was simple chemistry. The German military distributed millions of methamphetamine tablets known as Pervitin to its troops. These pills were handed out like candy. Soldiers stayed awake for days, pushed beyond human endurance, and marched across Europe without rest. Their mood, aggression, and stamina were chemically altered. The Blitzkrieg strategy, lightning-fast invasions, was fueled not just by tanks and tactics, but by armies of soldiers high on meth. Some fought through hallucinations. Some collapsed from heart failure. Others suffered permanent psychological damage. But for the Nazi high command, soldiers were expendable. Victory justified everything, even dosing an entire army with drugs. Fear was just as destructive as bombs, and nowhere was this clearer than in Los Angeles in 1942. In the early hours of February 25th, the city erupted into chaos. Sirens wailed, spotlights stabbed the sky, and anti-aircraft guns thundered. Thousands believed Japanese aircraft were attacking. For hours, U.S. forces fired 1,400 shells at shapes in the clouds, shadows, reflections, smoke. When the sun rose, there were no enemy planes. Not a single aircraft had ever appeared. The U.S. military shot at ghosts. Buildings were damaged. Fires broke out. Civilians died from accidents and heart attacks. The Battle of Los Angeles became a symbol of wartime hysteria, reminded that the enemy doesn't always need to fire a single shot to cause destruction. But nothing reveals the cold brutality of wartime strategy like Hitler's hunger plan. Beneath the surface of military operations lay a calculated plan to starve millions of Eastern Europeans. Food supplies were redirected to feed the German army while entire regions were intentionally deprived. This wasn't accidental famine, it was a blueprint for mass extermination through starvation. Entire villages were left without sustenance. People died slowly, painfully, not from bullets but from empty stomachs. In a war full of atrocities, this plan ranks among the most cruel because it was so methodical, so bureaucratic, so emotionless. Children, too, were thrown into the fires of combat. Many didn't last more than a few minutes, yet this wasn't unique to Germany. Across the world, children acted as messengers, scouts, and sometimes fighters. Their bravery was real, but they should never have been there. They were not soldiers, they were victims. Prisoners of war faced some of the harshest conditions imaginable, particularly those captured by the Japanese army. The Burma-Thailand Railway, later known as the Death Railway, became a graveyard for Allied soldiers forced to build tracks through jungles and mountains under brutal conditions. Disease, starvation, beatings, and exhaustion claimed more than 12,000 lives. For every mile of track completed, hundreds died. On the Eastern Front, surrender was often a death sentence. German and Soviet forces treated each other with merciless cruelty. Civilians suffered too. It was a front where humanity dissolved and hatred became policy. Even the most celebrated operations, like D-Day, carried horrifying realities. When Allied landing craft approached Omaha Beach, the soldiers inside had almost no protection. These boats were thin metal shells. When the front ramp dropped, men walked directly into enemy gunfire. Waves of soldiers were cut down before they even left the boat. Equipment sank. Bodies filled the surf. The beach turned red. Those who reached the shore had to cross open sand under machine gun fire, explosions, and chaos. Yet they advanced anyway, inch by inch, step by step, knowing many of them would not survive but refusing to stop. Then there were the firestorms, the most devastating weapon that never gets the cinematic spotlight. Allied bombing campaigns created infernos so intense they generated their own wind systems. In Dresden, flames reached temperatures hot enough to melt metal. Houses erupted like volcanoes. In Tokyo, entire neighborhoods made of wood burst into walls of fire. The firestorm swallowed everything: buildings, streets, families. Nearly 100,000 people died in a single night, not from bombs, but from fire. These are the truths rarely told in schools, the diabolic, unbelievable, and shocking parts of World War II that reveal the deepest layers of human behavior, innovation and madness, heroism and cruelty, strategy and suffering. A war fought not only with tanks and soldiers, but with fear, chemicals, deception, starvation, and fire. And if there is a lesson buried within these stories, it is this: history is not just about battles won and lost. It is about understanding the darkest corners of human capability, so we never allow them to return.